We have a fantastic panel for our last session, which is focusing on innovation. And we're going to be speaking to Pangaia and Elvis Cressy. So I would like to start by introducing Christine Goulet, who heads up B2B with Pangaia. Christine, are you in the room with us? Just wanted to double check. Yes, we have you.
I am here.
Fantastic.
Yes.
You're here.
Hi. Nice
Fantastic.
to see you.
Thank you so much for joining us. So we introduced Pangaia a bit in the kind of trends section, but for those of you who aren't aware, Pangaia is a material science brand launched in 2018, I believe. They've had phenomenal success. They have their Flour Down bestseller, which is a vegan, sustainable alternative to down, which we're looking forward to hearing about. They've also done incredibly well with loungewear. And if you haven't noticed in the press last week, there was a new launch, a collaboration with Colorifix using microbes to dye the tracksuits. So there's two products, my understanding, isn't it, Christine? There's a blue and a pink, yeah. So it'd be great to hear about that innovation. But I thought I could start by just asking you about about the phenomenal success that Pangaia has had and how that's come about, really.
Yeah. So first, I want to say thank you for including me in the conference today. I feel very honored to be part of such a wonderful lineup of speakers, and of course, admire what you guys do at Co. I've been following you for years, so thank you for thinking of Pangaia. So yeah, it has been a phenomenal success. I agree, Melanie. I've only been at the company for 8 months, so I've joined somewhat recently. Previous to Pangaia, I was actually working at the Kering Group in the sustainability department, focusing on innovation. So really excited to be part of Pangaia, where the focus is sort of this laser focus on material science innovations and how we can incorporate them not only into the direct-to-consumer brand, but also in the B2B side. And as you mentioned, I'm helping to sort of build up that B2B side of the business to provide more of a turnkey solution to other brands and to suppliers to easily adopt and integrate these technologies. So as far as the phenomenal success, I think when Pangaia was founded, the team really was excited about saying there's so many wonderful technologies out there, and we know we need to be smarter about how we're producing our clothes, and we need to make a step change. We can't do business as usual. So in order to make that step change, we really need to start adopting these technologies and showing that it's possible. So the direct-to-consumer brand is really that proof point. It's getting the innovations out there, getting people excited about them, helping to drive that demand upstream, helping to show other brands that you can do it, it's possible. Don't be scared don't take that risk, we can do it. And then a lot of the technologies that we've identified then will roll over to the B2B portfolio we're building out, where we can offer our innovations to others. But I think the success really does come from this laser focus that I mentioned, because a lot of the resources internally at Pangaia are directed toward R&D and toward partnerships will make these technologies a reality. So internally in the company, we have an R&D team that's over 10 people now, really amazing expertise. So from material scientists and textile engineers and PhDs, people who've worked at different segments of the apparel industry, whether it be luxury, Burberry, ex Adidas, ex Lululemon, ex Speedo. So really broad expertise to work across categories. We also have the impact team at Pangaia, who is doing full life cycle analyses with a third party called Green Story. So to verify the impact that we want to have across the materials and processes and dyes that we're using. And then we also have really important partnerships with the supply chain. So we have a joint venture with Gradazzero, so Pangaia Gradazzero in Italy. They're the masterminds behind the Flour Down, and I can talk more about that later. And then also with RDD in Portugal, which is not only one of our main fabric mill partners, but also has the dye house capabilities. And so if we talk about Colorifix, I can go more into the expertise that they have and how it was with them that this was really possible. So the success, of course, being in a pandemic and launching an MVP that was loungewear was very good luck. But I also think that the team was very smart in really focusing on the material sciences and putting the resources behind it that they needed.
I was going to say, obviously, we from the trend section that we introduced at the beginning of today's event, we did talk about some of those trends you mentioned, like the massive uptick in loungewear, quilted jackets. We know have had a huge uptick as well. And you produced this wonderful flower down, which ties in with a couple of trends. So, but and you've mentioned the innovative fabrics. Is there anything else in terms of that getting that product market fit right, you think that Pangaia's aced, that they've really managed to achieve where other brands haven't been able to?
Well, I think we have a really talented team with a vision of product as well. And we say at Pangaia that we're sort of at this intersection of science, purpose, and design. So design is, equally important as the science and purpose. I think historically in the world of sustainability, there's a connotation with sustainable products that they might not be as good. That if you have something that's organic, or if you have something made out of nettle or a bast fiber, it's going to feel terrible and you feel like you're wearing a potato sack, And how do you and it's going to be more expensive too. So, historically there's just an idea of it's a constraint, it's more expensive, it's not as good. And sometimes in the past too, I think products have been launched onto the market that maybe aren't performing as well because there's this desire to lead with the sustainability and the message and why it's so important. But I think within Pangaia, there's a focus of real understanding that you need to lead with the product as well. And the product always needs to be, and I think all of you probably know this, it's something we say a lot, but the product still needs to be stellar. It still needs to be desirable. And so sustainability is part of that story. Innovation, the purpose is part of that story. But there's always this, like, we need to have something out there that is amazing, that people really want.
Could I just add a quick follow-up question to that? Do you think there's a hunger for that information, because it's so much about the science, what you do is so innovative, the materials you're creating. Is there a hunger from consumers for that? Is that what you're finding?
Yeah. For sure. Actually, yesterday we just hit 1 million followers on Instagram, which is great. So that's been also a quick adoption of consumers to follow what Pangaia is doing, and a lot of the messaging is around the science. And our marketing team is incredible and is very good at being able to translate what that science is in a way that is fun for the consumer and not necessarily pedagogic in a very top-down way, but in a way that, makes it more of a dialogue, makes it more of a visual story. So I think people are loving that for sure. And we often send out newsletters as well that capture much more about current trends, whether it's COP26 or whatever is out there, to try to broaden the scope of the messaging. Because I think all of us want to make the right choices. All of us want to understand what we can do. And there's this flood of information, and the radar we have can only take in so much. So I think people in general are really searching for places, or organizations where they can find sort of the information in a concise, fun, relevant way.
And talking about innovation, I wondered if you could tell us a little bit more then about the Colorifix collaboration and the tracksuits that have been dyed using microbes.
Yeah, definitely. So as I mentioned, this was launched not only with Colorifix as the innovator, but also with our partner RDD in Portugal. So RDD is an amazing facility. They actually have 2 PhDs, like biotech PhDs, in their research department. So they're really on the cutting edge and always kind of reaching out to different innovators to try new things. And I, of course, have been following Colorifix since, I don't know, I think like 2017, when they first joined Fashion for Good back then. And so when I visited RDD in May and I saw like the there's a bioreactor in their dye house, and it was just like very emotional. I almost started crying actually, because it's a reality, it's becoming a reality. And just amazing to see. So, they have been working on this quite a bit because the technology is really to, sort of find DNA like from an animal that has a color that they want, to splice that, to put it into the bacteria. This is a non-technical version of what their technology is, but put it into the bacteria. The bacteria ferment and grow, and then the bacteria are attached directly onto the fabric. So the color attaches directly. And so it's a one-step process. It greatly reduces the amount of water, the amount of chemicals, all of that you need. But it wouldn't be possible without having that expertise at RDD and within their team to really push this forward and work with colorifics on that training and capacity building to be able to have that bioreactor. And then of course our design team and our R&D team come in as well to try to say, okay, how can we improve that? How can we test this and make sure it meets the performance criteria? What is the best product to put this out in? How do we, what's the message we want to put on the tracksuit? So it's really, I think, building these partnerships with the supply chain and with the innovators allow you to iterate really quickly and efficiently to get the product or service where it needs to be. And then the power of having the brand involved is getting it to market in the right way and getting it to consumers in the right way.
And we're hearing a lot about that today, just how how important your supply base is and how fundamental that is to creating those strong partnerships to getting the product right.
Yeah.
And so I wondered what's next in terms for Pangaia, if there's anything you can tell us about in terms of innovation.
Yeah, that's always a tough one because, obviously there's a lot happening, but a lot of it is confidential. So, I mean, right now in the B2B portfolio, we have over 100 fabrics. So we have like our sea fiber, which is made from algae that's harvested from Iceland. We have the plant fiber and fruit fiber, which are jerseys that contain no cotton to try to divert the industry away from cotton. So focusing on like nettle and agri waste like pineapple leaves and banana leaves. Some of the dyes and the treatments that we have going. So there are a few pretty exciting things underway. Like we're obviously looking really at the pain points that the apparel sector is facing in terms of sustainability. So we know there's a real drive toward more animal-free products. How can we help there? What is it that we could put forward? And also in terms of finishes, that's another place where you'll be seeing some new technologies from us very soon in terms of, the water oil resistant treatment or flammability things. Those are some of the things too that we've been working on. So we'll continue to sort of build things up. We will be showing at some of the trade shows like Première Vision and everything. And we have a newsletter you can join. I mean, I don't want to be like selling the stuff too much, but I can't go into too much detail yet on some of the confidential innovations out there.
That's great.
We love a challenge. The R&D team loves a good challenge. So
I mean, maybe some of our audience have some for you. Maybe they could message in. But I just wanted to ask then, lastly, and I'll come to a couple of questions from the audience. But any tips for fashion professionals then when it comes to creating a successful, sustainable product? And we heard, you previously at Kering, we had the fortune of working with you previously in that role, and so I know you come with a lot of experience, not just beyond Pangaia. And I just wondered if we could draw upon that, and more generally, what does it take, do you think, to get a successful, sustainable product?
Yeah. Well, I think the first one, as I mentioned before, is don't compromise on the performance of the product. Make sure that it's great and desirable always. And second, I think perfection is the enemy of good is a nice quote that a lot of people think about. I see some nodding, but we can get paralyzed with fear that we can do this, but then we're going to have CO2 because it's being shipped. You can't do everything. So figure out what your priority is in terms of impact and drill down on that as much as you can. Of course, having data that you're relying on, scientific data, to make sure that the steps you're taking for sustainability actually do make sense and that they're proven impact hotspots that you're addressing. I think that's also really important. And another thing that I think we all need to be aware of are the unintended consequences of what you might be doing. So really taking that 360 view all the time and trying to project forward, like, okay, well, if this is successful, what does that mean for the market? Is it going to create an imbalance potentially somewhere else? So really trying to always be like almost like an investigator looking 360 at whatever it is you're trying to do to make sure that you're protecting against those unintended consequences.
That's great tips there. I'm going to pass over to Tamsin, who is going to introduce Cressy from Elvis and Cressy. Over to you, Tamsin.
Thanks so much, Melanie. So a warm welcome, Cressy. It's wonderful to have you here, and amazing business. I mean, since 2005, you've been rescuing raw materials, transforming them, 50% of profits back to charities. It's really inspiring. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about your business model before we go into the products?
Yeah, sure. It's incredibly simple. So that's maybe why it works. We do three things. We rescue materials that would otherwise go to landfill. We transform them into beautiful things, and then we give 50% of the profits to charity. And our main, I guess, the range that people know us for is decommissioned fire hoses. I didn't start with the ambition to start a fashion company. The reason we started this business is because I was standing in a pile of fire hoses on a rooftop in Croydon, and I sort of put my foot down and said, none of these are going to go to landfill. I'm going to take them home, which was kind of impossible given that I was living in a house share in Brixton at the time, and none of my flatmates knew that this was going to become a new hobby. But yeah, we rescued since 2005. No British hoses have gone to landfill. They all come to us. We transform them into bags, belts, and wallets, and then half of the profits go to the firefighters charity.
Amazing. Do you want to talk a little bit about some of your products?
Yeah, I think certainly if I think about the three products that have led us to where we are now, the first product was definitely our West End belt. When we first started working with the fire hose, we had no idea how to make products. We approached quite a few manufacturers and we were rejected by all of them because they only worked with leather. We went everywhere in the UK and we were rejected. We went France, Italy, Portugal, Spain. So we started cleaning fire hose in the bathtub, and we bought a rivet press and basically a rotary cutting tool, and started cutting belts and making them. And that was easy because belts are long and straight, and well, I say easy. I'm sure making pure leather belts is much easier. But we started with belts, and it was a particular Vogue magazine shoot where Cameron Diaz was wearing one of our belts, and it was a sort of cornerstone image of the magazine. I think that was the real turning point for us was 2009, and that just kind of skyrocketed the brand. But making belts was the way that we proved that this could be done, and we started building a market. And then we made wash bags, which were again intensely practical, and then we made the weekend bag. But I think the product journey for us is actually quite simple. We don't make products that we don't already know there's a market for. We don't make seasonal goods. We don't do collections. I don't think you should buy a belt for spring of 2015 that you won't be wearing in winter of 2035, because that's kind of where we need to go. So from a, Elvis definitely designs the products. I don't. I design the business, so that's kind of how we divide up the work. But certainly the product journey is really about how can we take these crazy waste materials and turn them into classic utilitarian design that is perennial. So all of our research into product development tends to be by talking to people on the sales floor and asking them, what have you always sold? Not what did you sell this year or last year or the year before, but what items do people need all the time? And that's why our collection is small. And also from a quality perspective, I think what's really interesting about that is because we don't change the products, we just adapt them when we've got feedback that needs to make them improve. So the weekend bag here, the tote bag that you see in the image, that's not a tote bag that represents the work of a single season. We've been making a version of that tote bag since 2008, and it gets better every time. So actually you get the benefit of significant product development rather than just short-term seasonal product development.
Now, this product market fit, I think you had quite an intentional approach before you even began.
Yes.
For a lot of businesses, it seems like a challenge to access buyers and find out what they're looking for and what their best seller. How did you go? How did you do that?
Well, I think because neither Elvis nor I have a waste and an innovation background and an investment background. Elvis is a jack of all trades, so we aren't designers. So our focus wasn't we didn't ever do blue sky thinking or this traditional design where you draw something and then you go out and acquire the materials to achieve that design. We started with the fire hose, and then it was a process of understanding what can the fire hose do. So what are its key traits and properties, and where is it made, how is it made, what are its ingredients, what is its heating point, its melting point, what will make it crack, that kind of thing. And then we went directly to department stores and like Harrods, Selfridges, Harvey Nichols, everywhere, and we would talk to the sales team on the sales floor and say, what have you sold the most of in terms of men's wallets for the last 20 years? And it's really interesting because you can still find people who know that. It's not about, it was never about talking to consumers. It was about talking to people who knew what the perennials were.
And so you based your initial collection on that. How long did that research take you?
Not that long, actually. After about 3 months, we had a list of 11 pieces, and we couldn't afford to make 11 pieces in our first collection after the belts, because we used belt money to finance our first production run to a certain extent. But we designed 4 pieces, and then one piece, I just went out and met as many human beings direct face to face as I could. And I pre-sold it, much like how a Kickstarter would work now, except for I did an analog version of that because there was no Kickstarter. Probably what I should have done at that point was start Kickstarter. But I pre-sold 200 bags, and that financed the whole first production run of our first real production run of 800 pieces.
And then the kind of refining that into a product that increasingly met market. What was your process for that?
Finding the market,
to achieve product market fit, but as a set and as an add-on to that, then growing your customer base.
Well, we knew we would have a market fit because we were making classic pieces. We only made perennials. We made a tote bag, a wash bag, a double card holder, and a satchel. These are the things that you will always see in every department store. So we knew there would be a market for them. But how we found that market has a lot to do with like straight karma. We chose fire hose because it is a rescue. It's a material we rescue, but it's also a material that's rescued us. It has a 25-year history before it comes to us. It's a beautiful, durable, life-saving material, and it's red, and it's gorgeous, and there's 66,000 fire service personnel in the UK. So this relationship that we have with our raw material supplier, which is the fire brigades, is quite profound, really, because half of the profits go to them. We suddenly, from day one, had 66,000 brand ambassadors. And I don't think there isn't, certainly in the early years, there isn't an amount we could ever possibly pay for that level of goodwill, for that level of market awareness, and for certainly that kind of really narrative-driven, authentic support.
Can you share a little bit about the impact as a result?
Yeah, I mean, this is the crazy thing, is that for us, the goal, and certainly the way I've structured the company, is that most businesses are designed to create wealth. Our current capitalist structure is designed to increase shareholder value. There's a lot of companies, certainly within the social enterprise movement and the B Corp movement, who've said that planet and people have to come before shareholders. And for us, that's been in the DNA of the business for day one. We can't make money unless we're rescuing raw materials. We can't make money unless we're making donations. And since 2005, no London hoses have gone to landfill. This was a big problem we thought we might never be able to solve. But from But we started from day one stockpiling the hose. And from 2010 onwards, we were sustainably able to take all of that material. Now we rescue 15 different materials, including Burberry's waste leather, failed parachute panels, coffee sacks, tea sacks, printing blankets. There's, in my mind, no need to use new material because the UK still sends 40 million tons of material to landfill every year. All we really need to do is be creative, be genuinely creative. And then, so that's the impact on the material side. And the impact on the human side is that, we have donated more than £200,000 to the firefighters charity. And when you consider that it only costs £7 per session for a firefighter that is struggling from mental health issues to participate in a group therapy session, the impacts are enormous. I mean, we've funded thousands of group therapy sessions. We also, from our leather project, generate scholarships for women to train as solar engineers because we thought, cows, climate change. And in our first year, we thought we would have enough surplus to create one scholarship. We had 3. Then after the next year, I think 6, then 10. And the impact that these women have is so profound that, women that were trained 3 years ago from Guatemala decided not only to use their training to set up solar energy grid in their village, but also to set up a coffee cooperative. And 6 months ago, they sent us coffee, which we've had Q scored, which is how you rate the quality of coffee. And it comes in at an 85, which is, we're talking serious Shoreditch quality here. So we're now helping them import their coffee to the UK to create a market for them here. So these women have gone from beneficiaries to business partners in 3 years. It's, that's the kind of impact we love. Also, we run an apprenticeship program. We've had, I think, 30 some odd young people through the business. Lots of them have stayed and have really been our source of human growth. So yeah, we do lots of impact is the focus. Impact is why it's fun.
And kind of building on that, I mean, you can only have impact if the product's a success and it's out there. How did you find Cameron Diaz? How did that happen?
Oh, well, that was a total flip because someone from Vogue asked for a belt for a photo shoot, and I thought it was a scam. I thought somebody just wanted a free belt, and I emailed back saying we don't do free stuff, and this shows how naive I was at the time about the way this industry works. And actually, one of my really good friends who's in fashion PR said, she's like, I will buy the belt myself. I will send it to them myself. And nothing happened for 6 months because these magazines take forever. And then they send you a copy of the magazine. And I was quite embarrassed that this actually was it was quite a mega photo. And the really interesting thing about that was that we had had lots of press before that, but mostly in the business press, because people were obsessed then and obsessed now that we give 50% of the profits to charity. But it was the 2009 Vogue piece that got us into fashion press, that started people thinking that we were serious players in this industry. And actually, it certainly led to, we won an award from Walpole. We went to this one meeting, which was hysterical, where the head of Walpole said that we were the future of luxury. And at the time we were a 2-person business. And we thought, wow, luxury's in trouble if we're the future.
Amazing. Yeah. And so just to follow on that, I mean, I think your business model is you've talked about giving profits back to charity. But one of the challenges many businesses have, which are trying to combine sustainability with great products, is that the cost is actually more. How do you offset that? How do you manage that extra cost of processing product more sustainably, of reducing your impact on the planet?
So there's a huge bonus in rescuing raw materials. Typically in a luxury product, 50% of your hard costs are labor, 50% are raw materials. Our raw materials are free. Now our labor is probably double because we have to transform these things into beautiful materials. But that cost is spread over the course of the year because labor is spread. We're vertically integrated. We manufacture all of our own stuff. We don't outsource anything. So we don't have this upfront material cost or this upfront order cost. That helps a lot. The other thing that helps is that because we're not constantly reinventing a tote bag, we are able to put that that money into R&D. We don't do shows. We don't do fashion weeks. We don't, fashion to me is ephemeral. I'm after perennial. I'm not after something that's transient. And that certainly saves money. And we still don't do free stuff. We still don't give things away. If people want to use our goods, they have to buy them. And we don't do any discounts at all. Like, there is no Black Friday. We've never had a piece of dead stock ever. We do small product runs, and when we run out, we celebrate, because that means a whole bunch of material was rescued, and then we make more after that.
Amazing. So what's next?
Oh, I mean, next is, I'm in a mess of next right now, which is super exciting. So I'm in the top floor of a farmhouse at a farm we bought early on in the pandemic. Elvis and I went for a long walk, and we had always wanted to move the business to a farm because we wanted to engage in a regenerative agriculture project. But we thought we would be 60 when that happened, which would have been terrible, because farming is not something you should start when you're 60, based on the amount of work we've taken on so far. But the reason we wanted to get involved in that is that, we've got these existential threats, climate change and biodiversity loss. And for me, I can't outsource that problem to someone else. We need to be involved in it directly. I need to get to grips with what soil health really means, microbiology, carbon sequestration, water infiltration, all of that. I need to know it. I need to breathe it. So we bought this farm, and we bought it without, again, like, we rescued the fire hose without knowing what we were going to do with it. We bought the farm without knowing what we were going to grow here. We knew we were going to do holistic planned grazing. We knew we were going to do regenerative. But actually, after all the soil testing came back, it told us that basically the only thing we could grow here on our south-facing Kent chalk slopes was grapes. So we are planting 11,668 vines in the spring, and by 2025, we'll be making the best wine in the UK, because no pesticides, no fertilizer, genuine terroir, because if you're using glyphosate, then you're drinking glyphosate, and we're not going to be doing any of that. So the vineyard and the farm is a big project for us. We're building a new workshop here to make all of our products here. That's being built out of straw bales. Apparently, it's going to be the biggest straw bale building in Europe, which is a little terrifying, but fun and games. It's a carbon negative material we bought from a farmer down the road, so that's wonderful. And also, during the pandemic, we worked with a team of academics at Queen Mary University to develop a solar powered microforge, because I was annoyed that we weren't able to make our own hardware. Our belt buckles are currently something we buy, and I wanted to make them, and I wanted to make them out of waste, and I wanted to make them without using fossil fuels. And the only way we could find a way to do that is if I made them out of littered aluminum cans, and designed a forge. So we designed and built the forge, and we're open sourcing that technology. So the forge is very shortly going to go public, and we're sharing. So yeah, I mean, we don't have any secrets. If anyone wants to come here at any time and learn anything about what we do, I'll tell you everything. I think time's too short for secrets, especially if you're doing something really good. And that's probably the benefit of not having external investors that would be afraid about us giving away our IP. But yeah, the forge is totally open source, and it works. And it needs to work, because still in the UK every year we litter 16 million aluminum cans into our public spaces. And worse than that, 2 billion cans, which represents about 20% of the total, do not get recycled because they go in the wrong bin. And the 4 million that end up in public spaces end up contributing to the deaths of 4 million small mammals, because they get stuck in the cans and the drinks containers. They get hit by cars crossing the road. And, we just have to grow up as a civilization. And if inspiring people to cherish waste aluminum rather than throwing out their car window means I have to make my own belts from solar powered microforge, then yeah, that's what we can do.
And letting everyone in the room know that Cressy is on Code. So if you want to connect and find out more with that open source technology, we'd love to share that and make it available to other businesses trying to do the same thing. And I also wanted to, an observation that it looks as though the success that you've achieved with Elvis and Cressy has kind of opened the doors to allow you to innovate, to explore. So not only is it that you've achieved impact with that company, it's empowered you to do other things.
Yeah, I think when you in the first years of starting a business, you're just trying to get that established. And I like to sort of break it down into decades. In my 20s, I was trying to work out who I was. In in my 30s, I was trying to become good at that because at that point I knew that I was a materials innovator and a materials rescuer. And I'm 44 now. And my 40s this is the impact decade. And you know, I have some sort of wise women around me that say, "Oh, just wait till you're 50. It's going to be mental." And I literally can't wait to be 50 now because I have a feeling like the doors are going to blow off. But yeah, for me, the whole reason to start a business was always because I knew that if you can just make enough money to stay open, then you can pretty much go crazy. And my version of crazy is, you know, is system change. We don't have that much time, and we've got some big problems. And I don't care how small your business is, you can have a big impact. You know, we're not the bull in the china shop, but we certainly are the fly in the bull's nose in the china shop, and that fly can have a lot of impact.
I think there's a lot of synergy with the material innovation concept with some of the skills and experience Christine brings to the table. So I'm going to bring her in a moment. But before that, just one more question for you. Any tips, recommendations for fashion professionals when it comes to successful, sustainable products?
Yeah, I think the biggest tip I can give you is go and read through the SDGs. The UN Sustainable Development Goals gives you a template of the kinds of challenges we face as a civilization, and fall in love with one of those problems. Dedicate your life to it. That one of them will appeal to you, and then one of them will be matched with your skill set. And then you're always going to have a life filled with purpose. You're always going to be able to find people to collaborate with, people to help you. But yes, go out and fall in love with a problem, because that has to come first for me.
Thank you. And we've got some great feedback coming in through the chat on your talk. Thank you. So Christine, and this is a question to both of you, I think, but Christine, if you could start. So looking at the fashion industry as a whole, I know you've made it your mission to look for ways that we can do things differently with biodiversity, with material innovation. What do you think is going to make the most difference to our industry if more companies commit to it?
Well, I think what's going to make the most difference, Cressy was talking about system change and the capitalist structure. I think what's going to make the most difference is if companies work harder to make sure that everybody's financial incentives are aligned to impact related KPIs. So that if you have the buyer who is not getting a bigger bonus because the materials are less expensive, but because the materials have a lower impact, they're going to pay much more attention and prioritize that in their day-to-day job. So for me, like the best company that's out there, which is maximizing profit and not impact, a normal sort of, not a social enterprise, but a normal functioning brand of today in most cases. If they make sure that every single person has annual objectives that count toward their annual review that are impact related, that's going to make the biggest change, in my opinion. But I do think in terms of what can, if you're looking at the value chain and what can a brand do to change how they're currently operating through the production of their products, I mean, I think regenerative agriculture obviously is huge, because if you do need to go back to the science, and I was lucky enough to work with Helen Crowley for many years at Kering, who is a scientist, and she was always said, well, where's the data? Go back to the science. If you look at it, this is really what's going to make the difference. So I do think that's probably the biggest opportunity right now.
Thank you. And back to you, Cressy, these are huge challenges that face our industry at the moment. Do you have, or do either of you have any thoughts on microfibers, biodiversity? How can we innovate? Can we innovate our way out of this? Do we need another business model? Cressy, your business model is incredibly inspiring, but how do we encourage more businesses to take that up?
So there's two. I mean, we couldn't exist at a more thrilling time, because I've never seen before the amount of collaboration between academics and designers that is starting to really flourish now. I mean, we work with academic teams, and obviously they do at Pangaia as well, and that's hugely promising. So I think the innovation is there. I think it's just kind of got to wake up. But we are looking at, as you say, a massive uphill battle, because more than 99% of the fibers currently out there are totally unsustainable. You know, if you go to some of the big fabric expos, 99% of the material that's there is pretty much baba when it comes to the environment and its people. So the other side of it, like innovation is great, and it does have a chance to save us. But governments have to get real and start legislating ecocide and degradation of human beings in the supply chain. We've got great modern slavery legislation, but we have modern slavery happening in the UK at the same time. So we've got to start focusing on rewarding brilliant behavior as Christine suggested with the KPIs, and really punishing bad exploitative behavior. And I mean real punishments. I mean, companies have to be fined to the extent that they go out of business, and leaders of those companies have to be punished to the extent that they go to prison. If you're putting chemicals into the environment that are destroying ecosystems, I don't think you should avoid a prison sentence. You know, if you go to prison for shoplifting, how can you not go to prison for putting sewage in the rivers in the UK and doing that for shareholder gain?
Just to add on to that, and I do agree the incentives have to be a carrot or a stick for sure. As long as you're leading people to the road you want through the thing that might speak to them the most, which is often the wallet, unfortunately. But also going back to your question, Tamsin, about biodiversity, you know, I think there is a huge amount of innovation that can be done. And often we're looking at some fancy technology, but actually there's a lot with nature that we can do, and we can innovate again around business models or this fusion of nature and technology. And the philosophy at Pangaia is high-tech naturalism. So we're always looking at how do we take what there is in nature and then try to use what exists today, the best available technologies, to improve that to a place where we do have the product we know will be right for the market. But going to Flower Down, just as an example, you know, Flower Down is made from the wildflowers and from PLA, which is polylactic acid, and it's a biodegradable. The ingredients are biodegradable that are going into it, and it's also infused with an aerogel, which again is this high tech piece. So you have wildflowers, you have a biopolymer, and then you have this very sophisticated aerogel, which is applied, which increases the thermal properties. But I love also the fact that going to biodiversity, the flowers that we're using are like wildflowers that are not cultivated. So there's no irrigation, there's no pesticides, and they're very important for pollinator species and help actually protect certain species that are endangered now of butterflies, because the caterpillars eat these leaves all the time. And the more that you sort of see the value of this plant and this flower, the more you're going to protect the biodiversity behind it. The more you're going to say this is a valuable plant, even though it's by the side of the road. If we can actually produce something from this, then we're going to protect it, and then you're actually protecting the biodiversity. So I think again, you know, I feel like I'm only talking about financial incentives in a way, but when we do look at biodiversity, you do have to look at what is going to incentivize people also to take these steps and protect the important ecosystems that we're looking at, and the materials we can get from them in a responsible way.
Can I chime in, Tamsin? I just wanted to also see if Bav, if you wanted to join the discussion, and I wanted to, because I know we've had some questions around circularity or about kind of the end of life, at least, of products, and I wondered, perhaps if I could put you on the spot, Bav, you've just joined us, but how much does end of life kind of factor into your design?
Okay, so right from the beginning, when I prepared my Conscious Manifesto, all of the materials that I selected were based on the fact that they could be in some way recycled, or make sure that all of my materials don't have a blend of synthetic or and natural materials. I would have to say probably nearly, I'm going to say like 98%, because, you know, you can never be 100%. 98% of all of my materials are natural fibers. When I do integrate synthetic fibers, it's because it's a material that has been an innovative material that's been certified for being sustainable in some way, but it's never part of the natural materials. So all of my sourcing has been done researching what alternative natural materials are available on the market. For example, at the beginning, nettle or rose petal, cotton, etc.
Can I ask the Cressy and Christine as well, if I could put the same question to you in terms about the end of life, kind of designing for end of life and how much that's factored into your product designs?
Yeah, for us, it's quite, when we started with Firehose, I think no one was really talking about the circular economy. But we kind of integrated. Firehoses are 10 centimeters wide. So we developed all of our patterns based on a 10 centimeter width, so there'd be no waste in the production of it. We've also always repaired for life. So if someone has the problem with any of the products, it comes back to us and it gets repaired. We have a program if someone tries to order the same belt twice, they get an email saying what happened to the first one. If they want to buy it as a gift, then they're free to do that. But otherwise, it generally is because they've shrunk or grown themselves as an individual. Well, we can shrink or grow a belt quite easily. So that's something that we do. Over the history, I think we've had 4 bags come back to us because they've come to the end of someone does not want them anymore. And what we do with those is we refurbish them and offer them to people who have been asking for those versions of those bags. So something that we do under the radar. And then when it comes to our leather collection, that's been designed for deconstruction since the beginning. So any of our fire and hide pieces are designed on a Lego-like structure so they can be taken apart and made into new pieces so that effectively they're perpetual, or as long as the leather will survive, which in the case of the leathers we get seems to be an incredibly long time. We haven't had any issues with the leather so far. Even a piece of leather that came to us that had been soaked in fish pie for 3 days, which was interesting. We were able to get that clean and get that back out without having to replace any of the leather pieces.
Fantastic, thanks for that. And Christine, I wondered if you could talk about all these fantastic innovations, but are they circular, or do they have the potential to be circular?
Yeah, we're always looking at end of life, whenever we're looking at a new technology or how we're going to create a product with a fusion of different technologies. It's always part of the analysis, and decisions are made based on the end of life profile and what we want to achieve. So again, with Flower Down, for example, the ingredients are all biodegradable ingredients. We didn't want to put something recycled in there that would interfere with that. By the same token, if a brand is prioritizing recycling over biodegradability, because obviously brands do have different priorities and approaches on how they're doing it, and circular economy is very much more into keeping things in use, then we have a partnership with a company that can recycle the filling for us. So removing the shell and recycle that filling. So building in sort of a take back program that would allow for that, if that is a priority. So yeah, it's for us really key. If you approach it in the wrong way, it can sort of mess up your intentions. Again, if you're talking about like this 360 looking all across what it is you're trying to achieve and unintended consequences, you of course need to keep that profile in mind so that you are not creating a bigger problem somewhere else.
Sure, thanks for that.
Interesting question that's come in, and I think it's relevant to both of you, but also relevant. It's great to have you here, Christine, because you've got experience within some of the biggest businesses as well as now a growing smaller business. It's so interesting that Elvis and Cressy have a large social aspect. So the change that you've driven, the kind of commitment to giving back. And does Pangaia have something similar planned? Is that built into the business model as well? And could you see that as being a part of a business model within a bigger structure such as Caring also? We've seen so much innovation from smaller businesses on that side, with other businesses like 90% giving 90% of their profits to charity. What does it take for that to happen at a larger scale?
I think the social side is so crucial. I actually started my career in sustainable fashion at Eden Apparel, which was also incredibly focused on building capacity in sub-Saharan Africa, which were where the supply chain was, and how do you improve the livelihoods and offer more income opportunities for people there. So it's so key. I do feel that big business is focused more on the environmental side than on the sustainable side. And I worked at Eden. This was a long time ago. This was like 15 years ago. So it's surprising to me, I have to say, that that as an industry, the environmental side seems to be so much more in the everyday dialogue and in the targets we're seeing. I think that's partly because it's easier to quantify, like the CO2 emissions or the land use. And so people, businesses feel like, yeah, we can put a measurement system in place for this, and maybe not as much around social. I don't know, this is my personal sort of musings about why. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a huge focus as well, maybe not talked about as much. I think what you're seeing is a lot of programs dealing with the social side. So it could be programs focused on women in the supply chain. It could be for a specific raw material. Going back to my days at Caring, we had a organic cotton program where we were working with Cotton Connect, a social enterprise, and we were working with the families and the women there. So I feel like, and teaching them about hygiene and education and the children as well. So I feel like it's often a very specific to different programs that you're running, that this social side is built in. At Pangaea, we do that as well. Going back to Flower Down and this, the wildflower. We actually, one of our suppliers, we work with an NGO, and the NGO is helping to give a secondary income opportunity to people who collect the flower. And so they earn extra money by collecting this flower and volunteering to work. Well, not volunteering, because there is a payment that's being made, but work. And again, this is where you're protecting that biodiversity by working with people to show what the importance of it is. So yeah, at Pangaea, we have someone focused in our impact team on the social side as well, and building out more of these programs.
Thank you. I mean, it's interesting that so with Eden, you had a focus on social. How do you think it lands with, and this is to both of you, with the customer? We had an earlier question earlier today. Is there more interest, more loyalness, more interest in following products that are focused on climate and environmental impact, or is it easier to build a base around the change you're making for societies? Is there more, does that time better with the customer?
There's sort of two questions there, and one is that certainly people are questioning, the market of people who are questioning what they buy and the kinds of brands they're supporting is growing significantly. Otherwise, we wouldn't have grown as a brand, because we have zero marketing budget. So I think that's something that's changed a lot, certainly since 2005. But I also think that what's really fascinating now is that you will get the loyal customers, provided what you're doing is really authentic. The customers that we have that are the most loyal are the ones who've all been here. They've seen what we do. They've been to one of the workshops. They are in the fire service. They've benefited from the firefighters' charity programs. And then you've got someone who's an advocate for what you do for life, because they're part of what you do. It's not my story anymore. It's their story. And that only happens if you are what you do rather than what you say you'll do. And I think that's the thing that we've got to really guard against in this industry at the moment, is that there are brands that are genuinely doing the hard work, but there are also brands that spend 90% of their advertising dollars advertising 2% of their collection, which may be sustainable-ish.
Yeah. And yeah, it's a really good question. I think everybody has, I heard a professor say once, everybody has a little passion inside of them, and it's about how do you turn that little passion into a big passion that they want to act upon, and finding that. And I don't think every consumer is the same. I mean, a story about, working with, cotton farmers on regenerative cotton might get them they might be more excited about hearing about the farmers than about hearing about the carbon sequestration of the soil. Like, you don't know what is going to resonate with somebody more. But I also think that, as I was mentioning, the dialogue is so present, in the news and everywhere. It's really focused on climate change and biodiversity. So I think that also has been able to sort of permeate everyday consumers' radar of what they should be focusing on. So there's sort of this virtuous cycle that's been created around environmental issues and how brands can address this and how consumers can buy to help make the right choices. And it maybe to a lesser extent, we haven't had the same focus on the social side as we have in the last 3 or 4 years around climate. I don't know.
It does
Would love
seem
to hear
very
thoughts
present.
from others. Actually, it's a really good philosophical question.
Yeah, it does now seem like we're on a cliffhanger from a climate perspective. And from our perspective, it's really important that the social side isn't lost. We see many brands like Bottle Top and others, Outland Denim, whose work is so fundamental for the people behind the product, that a message to buy less or buy nothing is devastating for those producers. So getting a more balanced view. We've got 3 minutes left. So I'm going to give you the floor, both of you, just to make a final point relating to the future of the industry, the opportunities you see.
The opportunities
you go first, Cressy, and I'm going to think.
I think the opportunities are kind of limitless because, we are facing an uphill battle, and an uphill battle is a great one to be involved in because there's so much work to do, and that's what makes it fascinating and interesting. I think, what was it, Dolly Parton was sort of saying how she gets out of bed in the morning, is that she says, "Dolly, get your fat ass out of bed." For me, it's like, I kind of do the same, except for in my mind, it's climate change, it's biodiversity loss, it's Rana Plaza, it's all of these things that could paralyze you or propel you into action. And for me, sleep is kind of tough because there's just so much to do. And the more we do, the more fun we have doing it. So don't think this is a depressing journey. It's fun. It's really, really, really fun. It's a privilege to work like this.
Yeah, and I guess I would, there's a quote that my dad loved, which is impossible is an opinion, not a fact. And I think we're used to operating in the constructs of, well, this is how it works. This is how business has happened. We're in a capitalist society. This is what we do. Or, I love, Chris, you were saying you didn't come from a design background, so you approached it in a different way. So I think, we have to just have that vision. Having that vision and sticking to it can produce incredible results. So I think it's really just saying we're gonna find the means to make this happen, and to try not to get distracted by the way things are done, or people who say no, this can't be achieved.
What an inspiring note to end on. Thank you so much to both of you, and to Bav, who's still in the room, and to Melanie for all the research and work that you did in going into this.